Right. How about that, man? Thank you, band. I feel like Jimmy Fallon with the Roots up here, like, making me look good. Thanks, guys. All right, get out of here. You guys are good. Okay, so welcome to week number 1 of this brand new series we're calling Unlucky in Love. And I'm so excited about it because really, if you think about the luck aspect in love, luck really has nothing to do with it. Am I right? It really has nothing to do with it. And so today we're going to start this brand new series all about relationships. And I know what you're thinking. If you're single, you're going, well, this is not for me. No, I'm not talking about like relationships. I'm talking about all relationships. How many of you know another human? You have a relationship, okay? You have someone in your life that you have to get along with at some point. And so today, we're going to kick off this series with what I think is the most important installment of this Unlucky in Love series. And we're going to talk about you for a second, okay? We're going to talk about the responsibility. Because after all, luck really has nothing to do with it because love does not take luck. It actually takes work, am I right? It takes work. And kind of examples of that are when we start a new job, right? How many of you ever started a new job? What do? You put in a little bit extra time, don't you? Because you want to impress the boss. You work a little harder so that you can make sure that your relationship with that employer goes well, right? But what happens after a year? The honeymoon's over, right? You're like, I was hired to do one thing, and this is what I'm going to do. You don't go above and beyond sometimes, right? And all of a sudden, you're like, man, this job's not as cool as it used to be. The boss isn't as nice as it used to be. I wonder why. Because you stopped working at the job, and you think, man, I'm just not lucky in my relationship. Does that make sense? Same is true when we date someone. You start dating someone, and what do? You wear your nicest clothes, don't you? You put your smile on. You actually clean out your car that you haven't touched in like 3 weeks, or 3 months. You know what I'm saying? Like these are the things we do, right? We put our best foot forward. And you date for a while, you get married, and then what happens? Man, I am so unlucky in love. Man, I wish that it was just like it was when we started, but my luck has run out. No, your luck did not run out. You just quit working. Does that make sense? Because just the same effort it takes to get into a relationship is the same effort we need to put into sustaining that relationship. That makes sense to everybody, right? Now, here's what some of you are thinking. I wish he was here to hear this. I wish he was here. I wish my boss was here. I wish my employee was here. I wish my friend was here. I wish my parent or kid or sibling was here to hear this. Oh my gosh, TJ, they have not been working. I've been telling them, TJ, they have not been working at this. And they need to straighten up or else I'm out of here. Right? Anybody ever think that? Let's read what Jesus says about that. Check it out. In the book of Luke chapter 6, we read this. And why worry about the speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? Jesus is about to lay the smack down on that attitude, okay? Check this out. He goes, he's asking these questions. How can you think of saying, friend, let me help you get rid of the speck in your eye when you can't see past the log in your own eye? And then get this. What does he say? Hypocrite. He's about to throw down with some people, right? Hypocrite. First, get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. What is Jesus talking about here? There's a relationship, right? You have a friend, and you see what's wrong in their life, and you're going to point the finger and go, hey, let me help you fix what's wrong with you. And Jesus is going, time out. Don't you realize that you're just as jacked up, even more jacked up than they are? So time out for a second. Why don't you do you well before you start working on other people? Why don't you get better before you get together? Because one half of every relationship you have is you. And if you got better, wouldn't your relationship get better? Doesn't that make sense? Like if every relationship in your life is failing, what's the common denominator? It's not them. It's you. So if we got better, if we brought our half to the table and we were better at it, wouldn't all of our relationships get better? So we need to get better before we get together. Does that make sense? So today, we're going to talk about relationships, but I'm not going to focus on someone else. We're going to talk about ourselves. I'm going to talk about me. Is that a deal? Can we do that this morning? If we work on ourselves, we can bring a lot more to the relationships. And if we are able to improve our relationship with God, it'll improve us. And when we're improved, our relationships will improve. And so I'm going to dig down a little deeper on one topic this morning, So we can all kind of be on the same page and really dig into something that can tend to pull our relationships in the wrong direction. Today, we're going to talk about appetites. Appetites. You're going, well, TJ, you mean like food? Well, no, not really. That is an appetite. It's one example that I'll use. But appetites in general. Don't we all have appetites and desires in our life? Don't we all have all things that we want to take in? The problem is when those appetites take over, it starts to take us in a direction we don't want to go. There's a Roman philosopher, last name Seneca, Lucius Annaeus Seneca. He says this, a well-governed appetite is the greater part of liberty. A well-governed appetite is the greater part of liberty. You want to find freedom in your life, what do we have to do? We have to be able to control or govern our appetites. We have to be able to govern some of the appetites and desires in our life so that we can be who God really created us to be. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we know what our appetites are, the potential of those appetites, and how those appetites affect our relationships. And so this morning, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the book of Genesis, chapter 25, and we're going to pick out some appetites from some two brothers in the Old Testament. And we're going to look at their relationship and how their appetites begin to break down that relationship one to the other. And so we're going to go there. It's a story of Jacob and Esau. Check it out. And when the time came to give birth, Rebekah discovered that she did indeed have twins. The first one was very red at birth and covered with thick hair like a fur coat. Congratulations, you gave birth to a bear. Okay. So they named him Esau, which doesn't mean bear, but we'll get there in a minute, okay? Then the other twin was born with his hand grasping at Esau's heel. So they named him Jacob, which means deceiver. Deceiver. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. Let me pause here for 1 second. Now, if in our culture today, if somebody has a baby, we just go, baby healthy? Good. All right, we're happy. Twins, cool. There's two of them. Everybody's healthy. Good. But in this biblical account, they go into great detail to describe what the babies were like, what their names were, what their names meant, and even the birth order, which for them was extremely important. Because if you were the older one in these set of twins, you had an entirely different inheritance in what was known as a birthright compared to the second born, even though they were born moments apart. They were twins. But they went through great detail to say this because the birthright was a big deal. In fact, since Esau was born first, he would have a double portion of the inheritance from his father, along with many, many other benefits. So from an inheritance standpoint, since there was two sons, Esau, the older, was getting 2/3 of everything that his father would leave him, whereas Jacob would have 1/3 because he was the second born, even if it is only moments apart. And so that's why they go into this great length to describe the differences between the two, or who was born first and the differences between the two of them, is because it's a big part of their story as we read on. And it goes on to say this, as the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman. You know what that means? Like if he lived today, Esau would live in Mayaca. Right? Camo pants, camo hat, camo everything, right? Okay. Big monster mutter truck with some big old tires, gun rack, belt buckle, boots, the whole thing, right? He could kill it, clean it, eat it, cook it, whatever it took to kill, whatever. That was him. That was Esau. He was an ancient redneck. You know what I'm talking about? That's Esau. But look at the description of his brother in contrast. They were so different. He was an outdoorsman, but Jacob had a quiet temperament, preferring to stay at home. You know what that means? Jacob liked his skinny jeans. He may even wore a scarf or one of those emo beanie things, okay? Yeah, that was, he probably wrote poetry and was a barista on the side. Like that's the difference. You guys get the difference between the two? And I'm not saying it in derogatory one side or the other, redneck or hipster, whatever you want to be, just be it, okay? But there was a difference between the two of them. And so there's a big difference. And so the passage goes on, and it says, Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed eating the wild game Esau brought home. So it was like, he's a man's man, he's producing whatever. But Rebekah loved Jacob because he was a mama's boy, obviously. Sorry, let's go to the next slide. One day, when Jacob was cooking some stew, or maybe a little latte on the side too, okay? Well, he's cooking some stew. Esau arrived home from the wilderness, exhausted and hungry, and Esau said to Jacob, I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew. This is how Esau got his other name, Edom, which means red. And then the story goes like this. All right, Jacob replied, but trade me your rights as the firstborn son. This is a big moment for Esau because he's next in line for the authority of the family. He's the firstborn son. He has 2/3 of the inheritance and so much more. And all of a sudden, his brother Jacob is going, you know what? That's what I want. And he's taking advantage of his brother's appetite to satisfy his own appetite. And so Esau needs to think long and hard about his response. But this is what he says. Look, I'm dying of starvation, said Esau. What good is my birthright to me now? He's basically saying if I'm dead, I can't even use it, right? But Jacob said, first, you must swear that your birthright is mine. So Esau swore on an oath, thereby selling all his rights as the firstborn to his brother Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate the meal and then got up and left, and he showed contempt for his rights as the firstborn. Now, in this passage, we see a couple different appetites. Esau's is obvious, right? Me want food, you give me food. Yes, like that's his appetite. That was what he wanted. But Jacob's appetite is a little more under the table, right? It's not as obvious as Esau's, but his appetite is still there. And if you read into the text just a little bit, he wants something that he doesn't have. And his appetite is telling him, go and get it. Even if it means you must deceive your brother to get it. Even if you have to take advantage of your family members to get what you want, go ahead and do it. And we see these appetites at play. And these appetites in our own lives, haven't you fallen victim to some of these appetites in the past? Where you know you shouldn't do something, but you did it anyway, and in the moment it felt good, but now you know it's like, that wasn't good? I'm the only person here that's ever felt that way. Come on, I think we've all been there. I think we've all done things that we thought, no, that was too far. That was too much, but your appetite kind of took over and took control. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to take these appetites and we're going to learn about them. We're going to use these guys as examples, but I want to teach you a couple things about appetites and eventually how we can actually potentially overcome these appetites and live the life that God always designed for us. So if you're taking notes, why don't you pull out that note card? I've got 3 things I want to share with you today. Number 1, check it out. God created them, but sin distorted them. God created appetites for you, didn't he? But sin is what distorted them. Sin is what kind of shifted them. Sin is what made you want to fulfill them in a way that God never intended. So there's hundreds and hundreds of examples. Let me just give you 3 kind of generalized ones. The first one, maybe let's talk about food, okay? We got a big smoker out front for our tailgate party after second service. It's going to be awesome out there. My appetite is already getting ready, you know what I'm saying? But that's our appetite. We have food, right? Is food a God-given, or our longing for food a God-given appetite? Yeah, it means survival, right? I got to eat food to live. But how many of you know that food taken too far can be a very bad thing? It leads us to gluttony. It leads us to overindulgence. It leads us to all kinds of things. It can become a problem pretty quick, right? I went on the Daniel fast in January. Many of you fasted with me. And it's amazing. Once you can't have a certain type of food or you choose not to have that type of food, how much you want that very type of food, right? Some people fasted small things like, okay, I'm not going to do soft drinks or I'm not going to do desserts, right? And for some of you guys are going, that's not small, TJ. That is huge. Okay, I get it. And what did you want the entire time? You wanted dessert, right? Because there's this appetite for it. Even though you literally could live the rest of your life without eating a dessert for the rest of your life and you'd be okay, right? That's true. But your appetite's like, I gotta have it! I can't do it. And all you want is that. For me, all I wanted was pizza. Why? Because I couldn't have no pizza, right? Because I was eating fruits and veggies and things like that. Now, could I eat food? Oh yeah, I could definitely eat food. There's all kinds of foods I could eat on the Daniel fast. But the problem is, my appetite didn't want the foods I could have. It wanted the things I could not have. And that's where sin starts to distort some of our appetites. It's like you can have something, but isn't your appetite always like it kind of points towards the things you can't have versus the things you can have? Let's talk about intimacy for a second. That's the word I'm going to use. Is that okay, adults? Because there's multiple generations in this room. Okay? Well, let's think about that. God has created a way for that to be fulfilled. And it's good. You know what I'm saying? You guys get what I'm saying, don't you? Okay. It's just really quiet in here. It's getting kind of awkward for me. Okay. God said, hey, husband, wife, together, intimacy, ding, 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 winner. Every time we break out of that, our appetites start to take us out of that. How many knows that's a quick way to mess up the world around you? it'll jack you up. It'll break relationships. It'll hurt relationships. Appetites are okay, but sin will point them in another direction towards something you can't have, and that's where things get struggling. You start to struggle, that's where things start to get messed up. In Jacob's case, his appetite was fine. That the God-given appetite, he wanted to build his life. He wanted to become something more than he currently was. So what happened? He did it in a distorted way. Because isn't it okay for us to grow our lives? Jacob wanted a little more. That's okay. God told us, humanity, hey, go and subdue the earth. Go prosper, multiply. Go do. We are entrepreneurs by nature, and that was Jacob. But except for his desire was pointed in the wrong direction, his appetite was pointed in the wrong direction, and he started to deceive to get what he wanted. That's what happened. And I think in our lives, we can fall victim to the same things, just like Jacob did in his, and just like intimacy, just like food, just like everything else. If we take our appetites and we point them in the wrong direction, all of a sudden, it's going to start to mess up our lives. We're going to end up places we never wanted to go because we didn't know how we should apply the appetite versus how we should not apply the appetite. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23 gives us a kind of a sobering look at why we should control appetites and how we should fulfill them. He says this, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Guard your appetites. Guard what you put inside of you because your destiny is tied to what you consume today. Where you end up at the end of your life is tied to how you fulfill your appetites today. So be careful how your heart is pointed, where your desires are pointed. Because when you point them in the wrong direction, you lose more than just a moment. You lose a destiny. You lose a lifetime. Number 2, if you're taking notes, go ahead and write this one down. The second thought about appetites is this. They are never fully and finally satisfied. They're never fully and finally satisfied. Let's go back to the food one. Because I'm really hungry and I like to eat too. And there's a smoker going and I can smell all the food and I'm just really hungry. Okay, food. We're talking about food. Thanksgiving Day. That's like an Olympic sport, isn't it? Like you line up the food, you got your turkey and your mashed potatoes and stuffing and you got your different family sides that are special to your family and you got the rolls and then you pour gravy over everything, right? And you're just like, yes! And you wear your stretchy pants because you're ready, right? And what happens? You eat, and then 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 you can't breathe properly anymore. And so you sit on the couch, and you're just going, whew, whew. Flip on the football game, watch a little bit of football, and then what happens? As soon as you can breathe normally again, you're like, what's for dessert, right? Pumpkin pie, a la mode, thank you very much, right? Why do we do that? Are we satisfied? No, because we just want a little bit more. I'm pretty sure I could fit a slice of pie right in over here somewhere, right? Why do we do that? Because our desires and our appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. That's an example all of us can relate to, right? When we're never fully and finally satisfied. Jacob's life is just a pure example of that. So in the story we just read, he steals the birthright of his brother Esau. And at the end of his father Isaac's life, he's going blind, he can't see. He decides it's time for him to give out a blessing to Esau because he's the firstborn son. And he wants to bless him before he goes. And so Jacob, with the help of his mother, deceives his father, and Jacob steals Esau's blessing as well as his birthright. You think it would be enough to steal the man's birthright, but then now he goes about business and he steals the blessing too. Talk about a jerk brother, all right? Talk about a terrible brother. But what happened to him? His desire, his appetite was, he took hold of it and he brought it into his life when he traded the stew for the birthright. But was he satisfied with that? No. He had to go out and get some more. And throughout his life, we see Jacob, almost every chance he gets, he's going, can I have that? Can I have that? Can I have that? And he takes and he takes and he deceives to make it happen. Our desires are never fully and finally satisfied. Check it out also from the book of Proverbs, chapter 27. Just as death and destruction are never satisfied, so human desire is never satisfied. We have these desires, these appetites, and you know what? When you feed it, does it go away? No, it gets worse, doesn't it? It's like that freaking stray cat in your neighborhood. You're like, oh, I feel so bad for it, and you feed it. Now you've got a pet, right? It's like, no, I didn't mean that. I just felt bad for you. Go away. I just go. No, you just fed that desire. All of a sudden, it's going to grow. And every time we feed that desire, does it go away or does it get worse? That cat finds a friend. All of a sudden, you're a cat lady, right? It gets worse and worse and worse. What's happening? When you start feeding the desire in your life, you say, you know what, this appetite from God is healthy, but I'm going to try it over here too and try to fulfill it in a different way. When you go over there and you feed it, all of a sudden you're creating a monster in your life. So what do you have to do? How do you stop those appetites from growing? Well, you certainly can't feed it enough that it goes away. So what's the opposite of feeding it? You got to starve that sucker. And I'm not condoning starving cats. Although, well, maybe I am a little bit, okay? Like, seriously, just get a dog, you know what I'm saying? All right. But in your life, have you ever been able to feed a desire so much that it goes away? It's never happened, has it? So we have to do the opposite. We have to starve it out. You have to let it go. Another example is from my friends who own boats. They tell me, BOAT, boat stands for break out another 1,000. Because they're always getting broken, right? You always have to fix this or fix that, and the salt water tears it up. The only way you can get rid of that problem is if you sell the boat, right? It's time for us to sell some desires in our life, to starve out some desires in our life, because they don't belong there. They're not from God, or the desires from God, but the sin is distorted to the point where we need to get back on the main path and the way God intended us to live. And so we need to sell some of that. We need to starve some of that out and make sure that we're disciplined. And sometimes we need to tell someone that we're struggling with that. That's why we have small groups here. We call them connect groups. That's why we're starting our one-to-one mentorship program, because some of these desires are too hard for you to starve out on your own, and it's affecting your relationships, and it's breaking your life apart. It's time for you to do something about it. It's time for you to get a friend to help walk you through it. You would call it accountability, right? To starve those things out in your life. And then number 3, this is the big one for Esau. They want it now, not later. Every appetite will tell you, you must do it now. Everyone. If it's an impulse buy, right? Everybody here buys something that they didn't really need at the moment, and then you get a little bit of buyer's remorse. That's a desire going, I need it now, I need it now, I need it now, right? Or that food, or that dessert, or that intimacy encounter, or that whatever, right? The desires pull at you, pull at you, pull at you, pull at you. They want it, and they want it now. That was what was happening to Esau. Esau comes in, he's hungry, he has an appetite, and he goes, I need some stew. Give it to me. And his brother says, I want you to give me your birthright. Well, I need stew, and I need it now. Did he really need it now? I mean, honestly, the dude's walking around and talking. I don't think he's going to die of starvation any second, right? Just walk to the next tent and see who has some food. Or if you're the redneck and he's the mama's boy, why don't you just beat him up and take it from him, right? Like I don't understand the logic in any of this. And so Jacob is just like, no, give me your birthright. And Esau didn't even care. He just goes, I want it now. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, I want it now. But he lost more than a birthright. He traded his birthright and he got stew. But that birthright was so much more in the long run. Because you've heard in the Old Testament, God referred to himself, or the writers of the Old Testament refer to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That birthright should have been Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Talk about a sacrifice, right? And not only that, Jacob's name was changed by God to Israel, and they became the Israelites. They became the Hebrew nation. They became the nation of Israel even to this day. And through the lineage of Jacob, not Esau, we got to see the Messiah, Jesus, come about. Wow. Talk about an expensive bowl of stew. He lost the ultimate in his life for the immediate. He lost a destiny designed by God for a calling for a moment. That's a lot, isn't it? Sometimes our appetites, they'll lead us in places we never should have gone, and the cost is more than a moment. It costs us for a lifetime. That's what happened to Esau for a bowl of red stew. That's all he got. Out of the whole deal, that's all he got. Now think about that for our own lives. if we trade something out of the way God intended it to go, if we start to fulfill desire outside, I wonder what we're really giving up. Yeah, in a moment we could see the immediate consequence, but the down the road consequences could be so much more. There could be so much, we could be missing out on so much more, just like Esau. But thank God we have a God that even if we get off track, he pulls us right back in if we want him to. Check out this verse from Ephesians chapter 6. It's in the Message translation, so it's a little more like street language, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're cool with that. And that about wraps it up. And I love this part. God is strong, and he wants you strong. So take everything the master has set out for you, well-made weapons of the best materials, and put them to use so you will be able to stand up to everything the devil throws your way. And the verse finishes like this. This is no afternoon athletic contest that we walk away from and forget about in a couple of hours. This isn't for right now. What is he saying? He goes, this is for keeps. A life or death fight to the finish against the devil and all of his angels. This is not a moment where we can just go, you know what, I'll just step over here and I'll be back. He's going, no, the consequences are far greater than that. It's lifelong. Lifelong. But thank God, no matter how far we've wandered away, he goes, through Jesus, you can come right back. And you may have taken a 1,000-mile journey away from where God wants you to be, but he says, in one step, that step towards me, I can get you right back where you need to be, put you right back on the path, and help you recover, help you go in the right direction once again. So if we want to make our relationships better, we've got to get better. In order for us to get better, we need to get better with him. We need to get better with him. So before we get together with anyone else, we need to focus on, number one, our relationship with him. And when we do that, all of a sudden, all of our relationships are going to start to get better. So here's the number one way we can do that, is to develop a relationship with him, is to first and foremost surrender everything you are to Jesus. The Bible calls that salvation. And when we take that step, all of a sudden God starts to do some things in our spirit, in our heart, our mind, and things start to change. And it's not going to be perfect from day one, but as we follow the journey that God has for us, all of a sudden our life begins to change, and things begin to look different. And God begins to work inside of us, and he grows us, and he shapes our lives. But it starts with that one step, surrender. Asking him to take away the old life, forgive us for all the things we've done, and to give us a new life in him. And that's what we're going to pray this morning. So if you don't mind, maybe no one moving around or looking around, you could even close your eyes and bow your heads. We're going to pray. This is not a moment that I'm going to say some magic words and all of a sudden you have this incredible experience. This is a moment where you get to talk with God through prayer. And I'm going to help you with the words, but again, this is your heart, not mine. So I'm going to say some words, I'm going to pray a prayer, and if you want to give your life to God, say, God, I want you to work inside of me. Say this prayer right there quietly in your heart. Jesus, this morning, I ask you to give me a new life in you. Forgive me of my past. Forgive me of my sins. Forgive me for the destinations that I've chased after that were never meant to be from you. And God, I pray that you give me new life, new direction in you. That you would help me control these appetites that have pulled me in the wrong direction. And God, all my hope is in you. My life is in you now, Father. And as I give this life to you, I pray that my desires would reflect that. My relationships would get better. In your name we pray. Everybody says, amen.